Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Apprentice of Buchenwald, the true story of the teenage boy who sabotaged Hitler's war machine. By Oren Schneider. Narrated by Josh Bloomberg. This book is a work of non-fiction. I have recounted the stories I heard growing up that my grandfather and great-grandmother told me about surviving during this horrifying period. Many of these stories are captured in detail in audio recordings. In a few cases, I've recreated scenes based on their recollections, or, for narrative purposes, given names to people and places mentioned when their actual names are lost to history. If a person's thoughts are expressed, I drew my description of the person's thoughts from these stories I was told. Introduction. Brooklyn, 2023. I became an orphan at 15 months, when my combat pilot father's plane, out on a scheduled training sortie, collided midair with a fighter jet. My mother, pregnant with my sister when the accident happened, never fully recovered. My concentration camp survivor maternal grandfather Alexander stepped into a father and educator role. He began sharing his World War II capturing and concentration camp survival stories with me when I was 5. The year was 1980. Every Friday afternoon, lying next to each other on my grandparents' grand bed, he would uncover another layer, release another nerve, unveil another painful memory. Details of daily life in the Buchenwald concentration camp, mundane descriptions of a forced laborer's work shift in an armament factory, and stories about uncles and aunts who died in the gas chambers were as commonly discussed as latest soccer league standings or the soaring inflation in the Israeli economy. Growing up, I lived and breathed the annihilation, destruction, and suffering endured by family and nation. Finding out that most children my age did not know, or were not closely related to a Holocaust survivor, came as a surprise at first. Carrying the weight of memory became a calling. I started telling my family stories to my friends, and they always wanted to hear more. Alexander's story is like no other. The project of documenting it began early, initially verbally and later using recording devices. His mother Irena, already more than 100 years old at the time, but still sharp as a whip, was the only other character in the story to provide a recorded testimony. Alexander was doubtful of the world's desire to hear him out, but I never was. His story is worth telling because it is universal and timeless, depicting the loneliness and randomness of an individual's struggle against an evil of immense proportions. To me, it was always the feel-good tale of a person, left to their own devices against all odds and finding the inner strength to fight, rather than a tragic example of a persecuted Jewish family who managed to survive under the chaotic clouds of war. COVID-19 brought tragedy, pain, and unprecedented economic loss to the people of the world. Our family had its own share. But COVID-19 also allowed me the space to travel back to 1980 and my grandfather's bed, and restore the courage I had as a young boy to confront our heritage. In lieu of TV binging, I sat down to write, reliving every moment of his journey. I spent months researching, speaking with generations of family members who survived by making it to the United States before the war, and using these interactions alongside research conducted via myheritage.com to complete missing family pieces of the story. At the same time, and half a world away, Alexander was taking his last breaths, quarantined and separated from loved ones. He passed away just as my work had been completed. His last request from me, the last time we met in 2019, was to make sure his story is told. Alexander, born 1927, deceased 2020, lived a full and rewarding life, and was a hard-working and successful entrepreneur, oozing energy, optimism, and charm. But his soul was scarred and tainted beyond repair due to his childhood experiences. I could never separate Alexander the camp prisoner from head of the family grandfather Alexander, who hustled and traveled the world to build a flourishing business and constantly push himself to prove his worth to himself. He remained a camp prisoner until his last day. Photographs, recordings, and additional materials about Alexander and his family can be found at apprenticeofbuchenwald.com. Never forget. Oren. Part 1. Alexander. 1. The Small Square 1. 1944. Buchenwald, the Third Reich. The sun was setting slowly along the snowy hills and gloomy wooden structures surrounded by the thick, barbed wires. The silence was broken intermittently by distant sounds of wild animals howling. The sky was clear, and the freezing wind was loud and persistent. One by one, the 30-odd prisoners left their spots in the roll call once their names were announced, and went inside the office in the wooden shed. Father was one of those prisoners. At least a dozen armed soldiers and a few German shepherd dogs were patrolling along the central administration building in the main camp. I was trying hard not to stare into their eyes. And then there were only 3 of us left in the small square, a doe-eyed SS officer and 2 scrawny prisoners. Only one prisoner was supposed to be standing there now in front of the SS officer. I was the odd man out, wearing a shabby concentration camp suit and lacerated wooden-soled shoes. There was nowhere to run this time. Even if there was, my 2 tired feet would not carry me far. The last few months forced Father and me into sticky situations only to escape by the skin of our teeth. Alas, there was no way out this time for me, at least not one I could think of at that moment. I was very tired. I vividly remember the thoughts running through my mind there and then. It occurred to me for the first time since we were captured after years in hiding that I didn't want to die at 17, namely because I was an only child, and Mother, if still alive, would not bear it. I saw her face in front of me. I didn't know where she was, if she was hungry or injured. It's been weeks since Father and I last saw her, when we were forcefully separated on the crowded railway platform in Novaki. Finally, it occurred to me that Father, who was taken through the office door just in front of me 3 hours ago, may already be dead. The SS officer was staring silently at his notes for a few minutes. The prisoner standing to my right was probably in his early 20s, but looked much older. He resembled a tall, coat-hanger skeleton. His badge testified that he was a homosexual. I had never met homosexuals before arriving at camp. His skin was hanging from his collarbone, his shirt blowing in the wind as if it was completely hollow. He had a nervous facial twitch and was rocking his waist back and forth, fighting the cold or seeking stability. I must have looked as helpless and sickly as this abysmal creature did. His mad-looking, sad eyes were rolling from side to side, trying to make sense of the unfolding situation. Why is he not being called into the office after the rest of the pathetic group? What's going on? The SS officer, blond and tall, full-bodied in his ironed uniform and probably only a few years older than me, flipped through his printed lists. By now, he was likely fully aware of the circumstances he was about to deal with. He then scratched the back of his head with a pencil and carefully examined the 2 prisoners standing in front of him. I knew that, according to his notes, only the skin-and-bones prisoner to my right was supposed to be there. He gazed at my prisoner number again and again, then focused at the other prisoner's number. Busted. "You filthy Jew swine! You should be back in the small camp," he shouted at me, and came closer. "What are you doing here? Who told you to join this group? I never called out your name or number this morning. What were you thinking?" Think, Alex. Think. There was no light bulb turning on in my mind, so my default was groveling. "I'm sorry, Mr. Officer. Sir, please. I must have heard the wrong name being called out. Please forgive me, sir. My hearing is not well since my injury." I was blabbering, rambling, pleading for my life. No way this man is buying into my bullshitting. Think. Just think. I shut my eyes. Then it occurred to me how hungry I was. I started daydreaming. In front of me, I saw heavenly Prague ham, sliced over a schmaltz-dripping fresh portion of pumpernickel bread, adequately sprinkled with fresh dill, on the counter in our family's delicatessen, and Irena Rosenberg sitting there on the fine leather sofa, smiling, wearing her favorite Persian fur, cigarette at hand, puffing smoke, and smiling at her son. I didn't notice that the officer was now standing right next to me. His first kick found my left rib cage, and I fell to the ground, gasping in horror. In a furious burst of rage, he then started kicking my head, face, shoulders, back, and feet. I inhaled deeply and started screaming in a voice I couldn't recognize. "Father, help me! Help me! He's killing me!" "Shout on! No one can hear your screams, you filthy, stupid, ugly Jew!" he screamed, as he continued kicking me. He sounded out of breath himself. "You are going to pay for this!" His mouth was watery, and his teeth were clenched. "Help me! Anyone!" I was screaming my lungs out. "Dear mother, wherever you are, I'm so sorry. I won't be able to keep my promise. Feeble father will be left to his own devices." My eyes were shut. Now, all I could see were the golden wheat fields surrounding my hometown of Sechovce, the shallow Ternavka River lazily flowing, with a band of bees buzzing over the low shrubbery. I felt blood running all over my face as the rest of my body was frozen, bombarded with blows. I will not make it back home. The bastards win. Not more than seconds away now before losing consciousness, I was about to embark on my third train trip this month. This time, to eternity. 2. A Golden Age. That afternoon in the snowy, small square, and the nightmarish months leading to it, came at a stark contrast to my early life experiences. My childhood was comfortable and pampering. Nothing in my upbringing had prepared me for the roll call outside of the city of Weimar that cold afternoon. I was a rather spoiled Czechoslovakian only child, raised in the lap of a vibrant, elevated German Uber-culture. We were the sophisticated, enlightened folk. We were the economic and social elite. I was born in 1927 in Sechovce, a small eastern Slovakian town located close to both the Hungarian and Ukrainian borders. Both my parents came from Jewish trader families who owned and operated revered Main Street retail establishments in their respective hometowns. Like many brides during that time, my mother Irena moved to her husband's hometown of Sechovce from her nearby birthplace town of Trebišov after her wedding. She named me Alexander after her late father Alexander Rosenbaum, who never recovered following emergency stomach surgery in Vienna, just a few weeks before I was born. Everyone called me Sonyi, the common nickname of Shondor, the Hungarian form of Alexander. I probably had at least half a dozen cousins named Alexander. My father, Solomon Rosenberg, was a grandson of the great rabbi of Tashnad, Rabbi Solomon Katz Rosenberg. The famous rabbi was born in 1840 and became leader of the Tashnad community in 1876. He died in 1898 and was buried in Tashnad. Known for his ultra-conservative interpretations of the Talmud, my great-grandfather wouldn't approve of many of our family's secular life choices. My father made it clear to me early on that he didn't believe in the existence of God, but also said that I couldn't tell anyone about that, especially not family members. Keeping such a colossal secret felt like a big deal to me as a child. Born and raised in Sechovce, Solomon, the youngest son in a family of 8, was the proud owner of his own namesake upscale Solomon Rosenberg delicatessen and specialty department store. His father, Bernat Rosenberg, the famous rabbi's son, owned and operated the upscale Bernat Rosenberg delicatessen and department store before him, and taught Solomon the secrets of the trade and the art of profiting from luxury goods. Father's 3 older brothers migrated to America well before I was born. His 4 sisters married and moved to their husbands' homes in Sechovce or in other district towns. Solomon Rosenberg always wore a carefully pressed shirt, 3-piece suit, and a tie. Always. When I was young, I believed he went to bed and woke up wearing a 3-piece suit, because I rarely saw him without one. Everyone called my father Zoli, except for Mother, whenever she was irked by him. "Solomon!" "Yes, dear?" "You forgot to place the order for the special Belgian pralines that Katerina and Maria like. You know I'm hosting the card game tomorrow evening. I hate to constantly remind you of these things." "Ah, so sorry. I was swamped at the store this week. It's the monthly inventory, as you know. I'll get a nice soccer tort from Hershkovitz tomorrow afternoon. They'll lick their fingers, trust me." Katerina was the Greek Catholic bishop's wife, and Maria was the wife of the Reformed Church principal, and they were both my mother's close friends. She loved to host and had many close friends, most of them non-Jewish high society socialites, who seemed to enjoy Solomon Rosenberg's delicacies while smoking and playing cards in our expansive modern living room. These fashionable women would sit in a cloud of smoke, long black velvet gloves holding onto their cigarette extenders, and talk about the latest seasonal Vogue trends to come out of Berlin, the fashion capital at the time. My parents didn't have many Jewish friends, partly because we had a huge family that demanded much of our leisure time, but also because our household was very secular, unlike most of the homes belonging to our extended family members. One might call my parents closeted atheists. Most of the Jews in town, including most of our close family members, were true believers in the Hebrew God. Other than the compulsory family events, including the high holidays, my parents spent most of their spare time with like-minded Christian adults who represented the region's aristocracy. The mayor, chief of police, and the Greek Catholic bishop visited our home and store frequently. "Shani, make sure you make friends at school. True friendships take years to cultivate and nurture. There is nothing more important than friends. Friendships elevate the soul," I remember her saying during a rare philosophical rant. She was usually a sharp shooter, practical and straight to the point, and didn't waste time on theoretical tirades. "What makes a true friendship? Do you have true friends?" I wondered. "True friendship means really knowing someone and connecting with them at a deep emotional level. It's about being there for them when they need you, not only when it's comfortable. I have a number of true friends, and that is because I dedicate my time and attention to them. I listen to them and they listen to me. You should do the same." "Does Father have true friends?" "No. His only true friends are his business and his wife. I guess he doesn't really need other friends because he has us in his life. He has many people who respect him because of his integrity, success, and professionalism." For Mother, style and sophistication were the secret recipe to living a satisfying, fulfilling, and respectable life. She always wore makeup, used the finest artisanal face and hand creams, brought to her on carriages by horsemen from farms around Slovakia, and a fresh eucalyptus scent followed her from room to room. Her clothes were tailored using the finest imported fabrics. "Berlin, Shonyi, is the center of culture and style," she used to say. "Maybe we'll all go there for your bar mitzvah." That would be something indeed. She collected beautiful, small things. I didn't care much for her assemblage of midget crystal characters or wooden figurines of farm animals. Those were all on display behind the grand living room vitrine. However, I was obsessed with the bronze statue of the 2 wide-eyed, long-eared French bulldogs, standing and gazing towards the horizon, which was placed next to the vitrine. When I turned 8, Father allowed me to pick up the statue. I recall thinking that the artwork felt surprisingly cold, and that it was the heaviest, most condensed piece of anything I ever held in my hands. It was made by a local gypsy artist and gifted by father to mother on their wedding day in 1926. A personal message and the year were engraved on the bottom. I followed the weld lines, scratches, and deformities with my fingers, and thought of the old artist in the run-down open-air village studio practicing his craft for a living. Unlike his wife, father cared little about collectibles. His passion lay in his trading business, as well as in local politics revolving around our Jewish community. "Why do we speak Hungarian at home? We live in Czechoslovakia," I asked him one afternoon at the store. "This is a smart question, Shonyi. Hungarian, like the German we also speak at home, is a language of high culture and education, unlike Slovak and Yiddish. Do you know what the word assimilation means?" "I think I do," I answered doubtfully. "Both your mother and I come from Jewish families who chose to assimilate. True, we go to shul on high holidays, but we are not religious or observant. We own a business, and we are contributing members of a community of Christians and Jews who chose the path of education and liberalism." "Why aren't all Jews like us?" He smiled and paused. "Because our family is privileged and fortunate enough to be wealthy. Slovakia is a poor land, unlike Moravia and Bohemia in Czechia that are very industrialized. Most Jews in Slovakia, and there are hundreds of thousands of them, are poor and uneducated. Most of them are very religious. We try to help them in any way we can. If you think about our small town, I would estimate our Jewish community at about 1,000 people, about a third of all residents. Many of them are well-to-do, but a considerable minority, and you see them lingering in shabby clothing around the center square, are very poor. But we are a well-organized community, and we help the ones in need. We pay for their Shabbat meals, and we make sure they have roofs above their heads." Until that moment, I never thought of our family as privileged. "Shonyi, you must finish all the food on your plate. Many children in town will not have any chicken, or any meat for that matter, for their Shabbat dinner." That was a typical interpretation by my mother of our privileged status. The Rosenbergs had lived in Sechovce for generations. Father owned a prayer book stamped with the name Werski Zhipov, a small town on the Hungarian border. When I asked him about it, he said that our family came to Sechovce in the early 19th century from Werski Zhipov. He kept that prayer book because it was his sole proof of the family's origin. The Solomon Rosenberg specialty store was my magic kingdom, and I was its exclusive and distinguished knight. The business establishment was both my happy place and my worst enemy, because it was my only sibling. My parents didn't want, or couldn't have, more children, so they raised one son and one store. We were constantly competing for adult attention. We played together and kept secrets from the world. The store was located at the lower-level front of our family house in the town center. Both my parents worked there every day. I spent every free minute I had admiring the treasures and riches displayed on shelves and stored in credenzas. Imagine a private, shrunken version of Harrods in London, KaDeWe in Berlin, or Bergdorf Goodman in New York, all at my disposal after hours. The store carried a wide selection of products, from the famous Prager Schinken, Prague ham, cut on a shiny and expensive electric slicing machine, and weighed on a fancy, modern yet ornamental Berkel scale, and salted fermented Scandinavian sourfish in small barrels, to expensive perfumes and leather luggage articles. The town's and region's finest frequented Solomon Rosenberg for self-pampering and indulgence. While father managed operations, mother oversaw marketing and public relations. Every Christmas, I helped her create gift boxes that were sent to our best and most loyal customers. She curated legendary chocolate, toffee, and marzipan assortments, and added a personal touch with handwritten notes on elegant Bavarian stationery. My crown jewels were the exotic herbs and spices sold at the store, exquisitely ordered in small wooden drawers, which were marked and labeled. I could smell them from any corner of our house, and from my bed upstairs at night. I used to dream of the faraway places where these spices came from. Cardamom, cayenne pepper, Ceylon, cinnamon, cilantro, chili pepper, coriander seeds, cumin. I was proudly reciting spices that were stored in C-section drawers from memory. "You forgot capers," said Father. "Nice job, Shonyi. You will soon be able to start helping out with customers." "Can I also please try operating the electric machine to slice the Prague ham?" "Absolutely not. Using a dangerous blade involves precision work, and a child of 5 would do best to distance himself from sharp knives." "You will be there to protect me." "Absolutely not. Stay away from the knives. You should spend your free time reading and collecting your stamps." He was not a risk-taker, nor an adventurist. He was a trader, calculating risk against reward in every step. From a young age, he encouraged and cultivated my stamp collection hobby. He used to set aside all kinds of envelopes and stamps from the store's business correspondence and bring them to me. He showed me how to dip the torn envelopes in water to neutralize the glue, separate and dry the stamps, and guided me on ordering them by date, geography, and themes. My albums proudly included stamps from dozens of countries, none of them I had ever visited, but from where the delicacies were shipped to our store. I mapped German, British, French, Italian, Spanish, Indian, and Moroccan stamps to culinary delights, large and small, on the shelves. Our house, at 152 Stefanikova Street, was more than 200 years old. It had 3 large storefronts with lofty glass windows, and a small gate in the corner of the lot leading to the backyard. From the yard, there was access to our home and to a few rental properties that were leased out. Our family unit was large and spacious, with a well-organized modern kitchen, 5 bedrooms, a lavatory, and a bathroom built by my father, equipped with one of the town's first state-of-the-art electrical water pumps. This was a completely new concept, as the town did not have central water supply. Our guests curiously admired the astounding invention, which I passionately volunteered to demonstrate. The backyard had a water well and a manual water pump as well. For cooking, our maids still pumped water into buckets and brought them into the kitchen. I remember my father marching ahead of a construction crew to build a concrete sewage pit where the sewage water would run in the backyard. The water was absorbed back into the ground through the layer of soil at the bottom of the pit. The remaining waste was emptied by a wagon driver using a huge bucket every other year. That waste was used for the most part to fertilize our vegetable shrubs. My parents employed a household staff of 2 women. One was responsible for cleaning the house and cooking, and the other took care of me. I had had a nanny since birth, and we spent hours together every day because Mother was at the store. My nannies were often replaced because Mother had high standards. I especially recall one of them because she, a devout Catholic, only spoke German. My grandmother Yolan, Father's mother, also only spoke German. They were both wide women who always dressed in black and spent much time together. That nanny would drag me with her on every Catholic funeral march going through Main Street, walking after the casket in a carriage, until Father, white as limestone, happened to walk on the street while the parade was marching on and saw me there. That was the last funeral I attended. Our cook was masterful. Her specialty was the Slovak classic peasant delicacy brinjové halušky, sheep milk cheese dumplings, which she would make from scratch every week. When we were hosting larger parties, she would prepare rich goulash soups, stuffed pierogi, and pork schnitzels or pork with dumplings and cabbage. As secular Jews, we regularly ate pork at home, but never spoke of it outside. "Your father is a good man and a hard worker, but he can be stubborn as an ox and inflexible at times. Don't be as naive as he is." "What do you mean, Mother?" I didn't understand what would make her say something like that about Father. "Nothing. Just promise me to keep an eye on him." Keeping an eye on my father? On more than one occasion she repeated this or similar sentiments, and I couldn't understand why. Town life was peaceful and tranquil in the early 1930s.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?